Well, hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing well on this, depending on where you are here in Columbus. I've been talking about the weather a lot lately, right? This is what happens in spring. It's top of the mind, top of the mind. We're living our best lives here in Columbus, Ohio, with beautiful sunny day. Feels like summer. Hope you guys again are doing well. We are back at you with another cup of joy with Dr. Joy, Liz and Lane, however you want to say it. And we are back in the relational well-being category. What are we talking about today, Lane? Rome. Oh, that's right. I'm
Yeah.
so excited. I forgot how excited I was about today's topic. So please do kick us off, Lane. I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, I know you were pumped about this one. There's a lot of juicy things we can discuss with this. It's yeah, the topic is just, as you can see, our title is your picker broken. So basically just why do we date the wrong people and what's keeping us from finding the right person? And romantic well-being as a whole, how can we improve that? How can we level up romantically? And like just to start it off, like we've if you've been in the dating scene, which most of us have at some point in our lives, whether we are now or we were, years ago or more recently, we all have like kind of like war stories is how I put it. There's just endless stuff you can complain about, and endless just sometimes hilarious stories about just like meeting the wrong person and it not working out, and or things that just have caused you to have some difficult experience in your life because this relationship or that relationship could have been traumatic, or could have had some repercussions for you. So there are so many reasons why we find it hard to find the right person. And I think that for each of us it's different, and it's an individual thing. But I am interested today with our conversation how we can kind of pick apart the reasons of why we end up with wrong people a lot of the time. And I did do some research, and Liz, you haven't heard these stats, but
Do
you know
tell.
so I found some interesting statistics just to kick it off. Like 75% of daters, so people who are currently like dating, say that finding someone to date is hard, which that's not surprising. I mean,
Hmm.
75%, like I would say I'm surprised it's not 100% because I think it is if you've been in that world, it is hard. I mean, especially now with technology and like the prevalence of, you know, there's always like another option out there, which is how it feels. Like it's hard to like, like like with dating apps, it feels like, there's always like something else better around the corner. So it's like
Mm.
that's a factor in this too, one of the many factors. But there's also another statistic I found where they surveyed 1,500 married couples, and one third of these couples admitted, or one third of the like individual people surveyed
Hmm.
admitted that they believed that they married the wrong person. And
Ooh.
then even even worse, there was a study done with divorced women, only women, and 30% of these women knew that they were marrying the wrong guy on their wedding day. The five most common reasons, they kind of like share out why they ended up with the wrong person. And I feel like we can kind of talk about that more as we go through the conversation, because I think it's relevant. But I just wanted to throw those things out there because
Oh, you're not going to say them now?
do you want me to read them
Yes,
now?
no. Come on. Like, don't have us like out here. We're on the edge, Lane. Serve us.
Okay, so the five most common reasons that these women have stated that they, went through with a wedding, even though they knew in the moment on the wedding day that it was not the right person for them. It was, they dated for so long, they don't want to like waste time and like investing in a new relationship after they've invested so much in this current one. They don't want to be alone, saying like he'll change after we get married. And yeah, I know it's like it's hard for me to read these with a straight face, and I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
like
I'm
no
not I'm
judgment.
not laughing
Yeah,
at y'all. I'm laughing with y'all because y'all
yeah,
should be laughing.
yeah,
Okay.
no judgment here. And then there's a couple more. It's too late, or it's too embarrassing or too expensive to call off the wedding. And then
Yeah.
the final one is, he's really a nice guy and I don't want to hurt his feelings.
Mm.
So that's where we're
Mm.
at. And
Sweet baby Jesus.
yeah, Liz, what are your
Whew.
thoughts? Obviously you have a lot.
Yeah, well, this is going to be a fun time. And let me just tell you all, I showed to this conversation fully winning in the relationship category. But let me say, a majority of my life, I have not been a winner in this category. So I'm absolutely not judging. I can relate to all the stuff. So just want to let y'all know that. So, obviously, and for those who are killing the game, you know what I mean. You're living your best life in your relationship today. Shout out to you. Those are few and far between, and so just glad that you are having that experience. For others, if you're like in relationships that aren't it, you're in the it's complicated status. Hopefully, these stats at least let you know you are clearly not alone in your complicated status. And then, for those of you who are like, I'm not even really into dating right now. I'm not looking for love. I too was one of those people, but I will say that although there's a chance that that's really, really where you are, I would say that there's a good chance that it's not actually that you're not looking or you're not interested in dating or being in a relationship. It's more that you've either been hurt before or you're frustrated with the process or you don't trust yourself or whatever the stuff is, that has you landing on I don't want relationship. I've had many sessions with people who are like, yeah, I don't want love. And I always challenge people who say that because it's just human nature. Every human ultimately wants love. You might say it's not a good time. Like I know, matter of fact, I can't remember if that episode has come out yet, but in my Disruptive Discourse podcast, one of our guests was a male who was sharing that like right now he's like really, really focused on some work outcomes in his business, right? And so he knows that as far as the time and energy needed is probably not a good time. So that's one of the few examples where that may be just purely, accurately stated. But again, I've coached many people who are saying like, I don't want to be in a relationship. It's just not my thing right now, but it's actually not that. And I always challenge them because when you send that message to the universe, then you actually are blocking yourself from potentially meeting your person. So for those of you who are thinking, it's not really me right now, I just ask you to like double click to see if that's really the fact. Because if it's that you just really are not interested in the BS, then say that. That way, you know what I mean. You have sent the right signal to the universe. So anyway, now that we've got that all set up, what do I think? I mean, I'm glad we're venturing off in this topic. And so, for those who listened last week, we shared and I shared about my experience with sexual violence. And so, we're like, oh my God, do we do every episode in April about sexual violence? And we know that's a freaking hard topic. So we're like, I don't know if we want to do that. But the reason how we kind of like landed on this is because when we think about dating, and when we think about sexual violence and the ways in which it can permeate your world and affect you, dating is definitely your love life is definitely one of those. So uh we wanted to explore the is your picker broken, right? Because I've encountered many folks in over the years of coaching folks, and we're quick to know like what's wrong with everybody else. But uh if we're honest, right? Like many of us have had patterns, right? We'll look and I'm thinking about those 5 reasons you just listed, Lane, and just some of the things where you're like, can you look back and see that you have had a pattern of staying with a person longer than you should have, knowing that they weren't the right one? Probably, right? Do you have a pattern of moving, of not wanting to hurt someone's feelings? Because by the way, this was a women's study, but men, low key, because they don't talk about it. The fellas don't talk about it. They tell me. Men tell me all their stuff. They also have this. I don't want to hurt her feelings. And so just haven't broken up with her, right? Because there are nice guys out there, in case you guys are thinking they're not. There's a bunch of them. And so they too say that. So again, do you have a pattern of not just in dating, but in general? Like, you know what I mean? Like not saying no, not setting boundaries, not walking away in relationships where you know there's something problematic, but you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. So just this idea of pick or broken really just speaks to the tendency for us as humans in general across the board to have patterns in how we operate. And so today we're talking about those patterns in relationship. And so it's interesting for me, Lane, showing up to this conversation because as I just stated, I have expertise in doing this the wrong way, like personal expertise, right?
Yeah.
But I also, glad and proud to say that I know the right way as well. And so, I think this is just an important conversation, and specifically because, as you all know, like if you show up to me and anything to do with me, Joy Society, whatever, we're going to circle back to what can you do? Where's there room for you to grow? And so while folks tend to say, everybody out here is trash. Everyone I meet is this and that, and she's not this and he's not that. I'm going to ask you, is your picker broken?
Mhm.
And I'm going to remind you, because I love you and I love tough love, you can only attract who you are. Right? So if you've got, if you're one of those who has the story of like, dang, I don't know what it is. You just keep having the person that's not the one. Then I'm gonna ask you, if you're my client, we're gonna say, what's going on with you? So we
Mhm.
got to figure out what's going on in you, what's existing in you that aligns with this, because there is something there. And so I'm excited for this conversation for that reason. And Lane, you always come through with these stats. Holy crap.
Yeah,
I mean,
I thought that you would
they're
find
like
them
flooring, but
interesting.
also not surprising, just because, when
Yeah.
you for a living, you learn people's secrets and you
Yeah.
have like bags and bags full of people's secrets under your desk. Like this is a reality. So again, I want to restate, please don't feel shame and guilt if any of these crazy, if you're like, oh my God, that's a stat, and oh my God, that stat applies to me, like don't even feel bad. You know what I mean? Because it's so freaking common. But that's why we're here for you. That's why Joy
Mhm.
Society is here for you, to help you level up. So I know, Lane, we talked about the how we wanted to go about this. And I think there's really like two camps of people, right? When we think about like what,
Yeah.
because like just to kind of set the stage, there's like two different types of camps, I would think, from a relationship tendency perspective.
Mhm.
So we just outlined one of them. One of them are the folks who you just have somehow continued to land the subpar performers.
Mhm.
Right? Like you are selecting folks who just continue to show up to be nowhere near what you need and want. But there's another camp of people, and some of these I think don't even know that they're in this camp. I mean, I think everyone who's in camp A is like, yeah, it's the people, they're the problem, there's so many of them. But camp B are the people who have had actually several good partners, like people who are good people, but they've sabotaged that relationship because they didn't know how to receive love,
Mhm.
whether they realize that's why or not. Now, again, this is why this one's hard, because some folks that are in camp B, where you actually did attract someone that was a good person, you think you're in camp A because you're not able to actually accurately assess
Mhm.
who they are, because when you're in the sabotage space, like you process a problem as if it's someone else's, but it's actually yours. You're creating it. It's
Right.
within you, right? So that second camp is interesting because you don't necessarily know you're in that. Some people do. Some people are able to say, like, man, I know I've had some good ones and I've totally just, jacked it up. I can think of
Yeah.
men and women that I've coached in the past who are like, know that, but there are others who don't know. So if you're one of
Yeah.
those people who think for sure you're in club A, the club A, which is like, yeah, there's just trash people everywhere and somehow they come find me. I would just challenge you to consider: do you potentially belong to the second group, right?
Mhm.
And that is that maybe you've encountered people that were a better pick than you thought, but you were actually the one who sabotaged. So
Yeah. Yep.
so I guess we can jump into it, Lane.
Yeah.
Start with like what is like, and we're not going to go deep on this, but I got excited just because again, in my growing over the years, and I wasn't pursuing learning about relationships when I learned a different
Mhm.
way to think about love. I actually was on my healing journey and really in a spirit space when I
Mhm.
realized that like our concepts of love are, for most of us, a little bit off, right? And so
Mhm.
we got this euphoria thing that especially women like, oh my God, we went on a first date. And I don't know, it was just something about him, Lane. He was just this and he was that. And then there's
Yeah.
that lust that's in there. I know you mentioned lust when we were prepping, and then people are like, I'm falling in love. And I feel
Yeah.
like most of what we're calling love is euphoria/lust. And I know you had some thoughts on that, Lane.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there really is like a period of falling. Like I remember when we were prepping for this, you said falling in love is a lie or something.
Mm.
Um,
You're like, don't be ruining my fantasies. But tell me,
I
Lane,
mean,
how is it true to you?
well, it's not like a fantasy for me. I think that it is something that I've experienced, like a
Mhm,
true falling in love with someone. I mean, my
mhm.
partner now, Colton, like we
Well,
had,
hopefully, since he does listen.
well, yeah, he does, but I I really I fell in love with him. I've
Mhm,
fallen in love with probably two to three men in my life,
mhm,
and it was it was more than just euphoria and lust. It was like
mhm,
I was truly falling in love with that person. And
mhm.
I mean, with Colton, it was, I mean, and I'm not just saying this because he listens. He actually doesn't. He is probably not going to listen to this one just because of the topic. But um, no, like it was very important. And like the story of like how in the midst of us falling in love is when I had my like extreme scary health like brain surgery, and I like truly believe like the like emotional and like chemical and physical experience of falling in love is what like
Mhm,
allowed me to heal from that as
mhm,
quickly as I did, and kept me going because
mhm,
his presence was so energizing to me. And it was not about lust. It wasn't like I'm so excited to just like heal myself so I can like get back in bed with him. Like that's not what it was. It was just
mhm,
him as a person. And I
mhm,
knew that we were right for each other. And I was like so excited by the potential and what was happening right then. And I so to me, like, but I also like to touch on the point of euphoria and lust. Like I have had experiences where I thought I was
mhm,
falling in love and it
mhm,
wasn't.
mhm,
And that was
mhm,
to me like, and not like to put judgment on anyone who's going through that. To me, it was like when I was younger, and
mhm,
when those experiences happened for me, that was like before I knew what love really was. I had
mhm,
not experienced like a real loving relationship or really actually what it was like to fall in love with the right person. And
mhm,
so a lot of times like maybe we could fall in love with someone, but like the situation isn't right and that person isn't ready for it, or you're not really ready for it if you were to examine yourself. And so you think that you are like falling in love and there might be feelings of love there, but it's not, you know, the right person. And so it doesn't end up having the same, and then we also get tied into like, again, obviously we've had these conversations in other episodes too, the fantasies of, like we have the whole like Disney princess, Prince Charming type thing. And we have like, these expectations of what does love actually look like. And so
mhm,
I think that a lot of us like do fall into a trap there and think that, it should look this way. And so we almost force it into a box to look a
mhm,
certain way. And when it doesn't match up with that, because we can't have a real life situation, no matter even if it is the right person or not, like it's not going to look like the fantasy expectations that a lot of us feel like we should have based on, you know, media and what we've seen as children in the movies, and or just even like what we thought from a young age that falling in love would be like. So
Mhm.
those are my thoughts on that. What do you?
Yeah, I think we're probably ultimately saying the same thing. I'm big on words, so I don't like the term falling in love at
Mm,
all. Because you see how you hit it the nail on the head. You said that there are times you thought you had fallen in love,
mhm,
but you really hadn't. But when I think of the word falling and what falling actually means, it's like
mhm,
stumbling into, you know what I mean? Like, and so typically that type of emotion is just that, it's straight emotion. It is euphoria. It's a
mhm.
high, right? Like, so that's what euphoria is. Like, it's a high. And so when I say that falling in love is a lie, I mean the the confused version of growing in love, growing to love, growing, getting to know someone as who they are as a
Mhm,
human, right? And growing to appreciate who
mhm,
they are as a human, and having your human reality align with their human reality, and you see
mhm.
the connection that's made there. I wouldn't I you know me, I've deleted a lot of terms from my
Yeah,
vocabulary and replaced them with others, because typically when you see and think about what are the common terms used, they're laced with some extra stuff that isn't really what we're going for. And so I just don't use the term anymore,
yeah,
because I have left that to be assigned to the euphoria thing, because it kind of, in the, again, if you think about falling, like it's like, huh, it's like this,
yeah,
free fall, you know what I mean? And so if we're all honest, like we've had those experiences early on where you just couldn't wait to see this person the next time, you know you know what I mean? And
yeah.
so, like, you can have all of that and this not be the right person. But when
Right.
you don't really, when you haven't grown in your own emotional maturity, when you have unhealed trauma, which is how we kind of started tying the two of this Sexual Assault Awareness Month and this topic, and this trauma doesn't have to be sexual assault, it can be other things. But the
Mhm.
various things that, if you haven't done that work with yourself, then you are likely confusing this euphoric falling thing with knowing
Mhm.
that you are sitting across from the right person, right? And so
Yeah,
there's where I just
that's
I've
true.
assigned that language. I've assigned different language for what you're
Mhm.
saying. You've now learned is what was happening when you met Colton, and it
Yeah,
wasn't. And to your point, it wasn't in the first week. And I'm not saying you can't meet
yeah,
someone and have some magical stuff going on, but it's much farther after that. I remember in my younger years, I started realizing, they always talked about, like, do you guys, I feel so old. Like, do you guys talk about the 90-day? Is the 90-day rule still a thing? Do people even
I don't
kick
know
that
about
around?
that. I don't
Huh?
know what that is.
Oh
No.
shit. Okay, they just gave up on
But I
that.
don't
So
know
there,
if that's age or just me
it
not
it
aware.
might be the elder generations, there was this rule about, like, don't have sex before 90 days if you're a woman
Oh,
and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. For
But
us,
I
it's the
really did
pre-date.
actually see over time, at some point I, like, started
Yeah,
paying attention. It wasn't necessarily about sex or not. It was just like you start to really see people's real
yeah,
after. If
yeah,
you can make it to 90 days, you start seeing the real. And so people, if they're saying I'm falling in love, this typically, you done said that in the first 30 days, sometimes 7 hours. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
so
yeah,
what are we even talking about there? And so that's, again, why I don't like the term. And when I said it's a lie, I'm
yeah,
saying the way it's typically thrown around, yo, that's called euphoria. That's called a new thing. Because
yeah,
if you've ever noticed, whether it's a new car or a new freaking notebook, you know what I mean? You're like, oh my God, I got the new,
yeah,
you want to write in it because it's new. You know what I mean? And once
yeah.
you've had the notebook for a while, you done spilled coffee on the joint. You don't care where it is. You done left it
Yeah,
at Barnes and Noble. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't even,
yeah.
and the
No,
same with the
that's
car.
true.
Like, when you get a brand new car, even if it's not brand new, but it's new to you, you
Yeah,
know what I mean? You washing it twice a week. No heating in my car. You know what I mean? Like, and then after a while, the luster wears off,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when you first got it, you were like, you would go by the glass building, and you would like see yourself in the car, like, ooh, look at me and my whip, right? And
Yeah.
so that euphoria that we have with anything new, you're going to
Yeah.
have with anything new. And so a lot of folks confuse, and I think women specifically, because of the conditioning. Damn Disney. I know I swear every time we talk I hate on Disney, but I just want y'all to know I love you. There's a time and place for
And they're
Disney.
getting better. Like the new Disney is better than the old Disney. Like from
Okay,
when
good.
when I was a kid, like
Yeah.
it's not all about like there's Disney movies. Most Disney movies now are not about like the woman finding a prince charming. It's
Yeah,
like
thank
there's
God.
more like
Reroute that.
female empowerment in these
Okay, good.
young Disney movies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so for those of us who are old heads, like that's all we saw. And then you
Yeah,
still
that's
have
how we
the
saw. Yeah.
rom-coms and the romance movies where the story of love is always one where the man's mostly perfect and it's just so amazing.
And they
And
save the woman. They like
news,
save
yeah,
you.
and
Yeah.
newsflash, ladies, save the woman or not, like ain't no man perfect. And if you were to get a mirror out today, you would also find out you too, my lady, are imperfect, right? And so, and then there's also just other media, whether it's because it's not always the Prince Charming. Like if we look at Black culture and some of the ways in which love is or connect, I don't even want to call it love. It's like, damn, is that love? But women are looking at love as like being with the dude with money and being in the passenger side of the whip, and you know what I mean. So it's like, and
Yeah.
he's got to be this rough tough. He's not even a Prince Charming. The Prince Charming
Right.
in that culture is, a street dude. You know what I mean? I ain't dating no dude that's not, that can't handle himself. And I too was in that. Like, like and so you're like, oh, these guys are so bad. But like I just was with the client last week. Let's look at your history and how you grew up, what was cool, right?
Mhm.
And so like though all of that context is being brought into your evaluation, and then will contribute to that euphoria that y'all are calling falling in love. When it's really just this fantasy euphoria feeling that you all know dissipates rather quickly. And that's why I'm calling it what it is. It's not falling in love, it's having a moment of euphoria that you're really enjoying. And there's nothing wrong with it. I just
Yeah.
think, if we're going to talk solutions, one of the solutions has to be that you start understanding the difference between the new car feeling, the new notebook feeling, the new fill in the blank feeling, the new boo
Yeah.
feeling, and this is the one feeling, right? Because
Yeah.
when it's this is the one feeling, it is very grounded. To your point, Lane, it was about someone that's being there for you. It's
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something more to it. But a lot of us have not been able to even get to knowing what that
Yeah.
feels like because you in the rotation of the euphoria. And then you also have the folks who, and I'm calling out because there's so many freaking parents, those people who are still married and either knew it wasn't the right one from the beginning or have since discovered one of the reasons you're staying together is for the kids. And every time I coach someone like that, I'm like, I need you to understand that you are facilitating an environment that teaches your child that love looks loveless,
Yeah.
because you are staying with someone who you're not in love with. You're not really love. You may love them as a person, but your child sees very little connection
Yeah.
between two humans, and then they grow up thinking that's what love looks like.
Yeah.
So we got the folks who are not even attracted to the fantasy amazing whatever. It's just more the non-emotional non-connectedness because that's what they saw and still see with their parents. So
Yeah.
that's what love looks like, that they don't think they're supposed to deserve any type of enjoyment, because you can still have euphoria. Let me be clear. Like I feel euphoric about Dwayne on a regular basis, but there's also
Yeah.
some real love under there, right? But
Yeah.
that is mixed in with some just awesome euphoria when I think about how much he means to me and how much I'm happy to be with him. But there are folks who are not even, it's a checklist. Like the mate finding is a checklist thing, because perhaps you grew up in a household where the emotional expression wasn't there. And some of those were because they were parents who should have been divorced a long time ago. And some of it was just not expressive parents,
Mhm.
you know. I'm thinking of my well, I won't say who. I have family members who female family members who are very not their parents were not expressive. So they're not expressive. Their child now is not expressive, and it's just like that's not a thing. Like
Yeah.
expressiveness is not a
Yeah.
thing. And so ultimately these are all things that are contributing. And lastly, I just want to double click on the trauma part, because for the sexual violence survivors, and really I can expand this out to say folks who are who had painful experiences at the hands of a very close loved one. It may have been a family member or someone else very trusted early in life. That's where you start to see the term good why do good girls like bad boys kind of a thing, like and it's not just women to men, it could be other genders, but it's where the psyche begins to align pain with love, right? Because the family member or close person represented love, represented intimacy. And I don't mean necessarily sexual, I mean emotional intimacy. And if that person also hurt you, then your brain is starting to tie love, right?
Yeah.
Intimacy, emotional intimacy with pain. And so you get to a point where you're unable to receive love because real emotional intimacy hurts,
Mhm.
because it feels painful, because it's psychologically tied, right?
Mhm.
And pain feels good, disrespect feels good. So you get to, it's a lot of women doing this.
Mhm.
You start shit with your man,
Mhm.
because whether you realize it or not, you're scared he's going to go. So the way you feel secure is if there's a problem. It sounds backwards AF, but it makes sense if you look at the historical experience where these two things that shouldn't go together were crossed and intertwined. And so
Mhm.
now, like, you're literally causing a problem, and that's your way of finding out whether or not this person loves you,
Right.
which doesn't make sense, but it does make sense because you're
Mhm.
doing it. Right. And so when that's kind of how we landed on this topic when we were kind of thinking through what we wanted to do as we continue to acknowledge sexual assault, and in April, Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and how much sexual violence permeates all of the world, men, women, everyone. This issue then shows up in relationships. And again, it may be that you had sexual violence in your past. It may be that you had um, some sort of hurt caused by a close loved one, a family member, a parent, some authority in your life. And so the wires are just crossed about what love looks like, what it feels like, what it is. So when you mix all that and then you put some Disney on top and some and some rom-com, we're out here with broken pickers, and we're unable to see that it is not them. It is you.
Mhm.
It is you that needs to figure out what's going on. What have you encountered? What truths that aren't true are hanging out in your brain and are being played out in your life with yourself. And then now you're attracting and even seeking. Like women and men are. Let's talk men for a minute. I have coached many men. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm just thinking of one client in particular, high net worth individual, all the money in the world, right? Also overweight, but all the money in the world. And so he leads with his money. He leads with his money to attract women,
Mm.
right? But then he's like, I'm sick of women being with me just because of my money. And I'm like, bro, you showed up with the whip, you
Yeah.
know, and the way you dress and your name brand everything. And I'm not saying don't do all that. Y'all know I'm here for all of it, but I'm just saying when you lead, there's a difference between like having it and leading with it. And y'all
Yeah.
know the difference, right? And so you're doing all that. You're making sure you buy all the drinks. You're going to take her on a trip, all from the beginning. You letting her know you that deal. Well,
Yeah.
if you show up to a woman, sir, spending all your money off the top, and that's who you're going to attract. You're going to attract women who are looking for a man who's going to buy him stuff. But then
Mhm.
you're out here like women ain't these hoes ain't look, you know what I mean? All that, okay, right? But like
Yeah.
how did you get to, you know what I mean? And so a guy like that can't handle meeting a woman who is like, I don't really want to go to some high end thing. I just really wanted to Netflix and chill.
Like spend
And
time with
so
you. Yeah.
so young man, you haven't developed yourself and haven't like, you're not fully owning your actual human greatness. So when a woman just actually is wanting to get to know you for you, you're not able to even I don't even know what that means. Like you can't even show. So then what do you got to stop calling her? It's the same way at back in the day that I could not date really nice guys. It was like, oh my god, I'm about to throw up. You're so nice. I can't even handle it. Like I just fade to black on them. Shout out to all the guys. I don't even know who you are. If you were nice and you encountered me early in my years and I just faded you, just know it was me. It was not you. It was me. Right. But this is why I wanted to have this discussion, right? Because it's so many of us that will, are part of the 75% who say dating is hard. And while it just is generally hard out here because it's hard, if you were to be able to get clarity on how you're showing up, what's making you show up that way, and then let's get that together. Now you've got a better a better chance, right? Because now you're going to attract who you are, and who you are now is someone who's gotten all this ironed out, right?
Mhm.
And you're not over here, and even we talked about gender. I think we had a conversation recently, Lane, about a female who was doing her thing in business, but then she's gotten to a certain level and now she's almost like sabotaging her
Yeah.
business because now you got to go get a boo, but you're attracting a guy who isn't on your level as far as where you've got to in your career, but he actually is on your emotional level because he's a bit of a leech.
Mhm.
Right? And
Yeah.
you're feeling like you need to get rid of your business almost, right? Because it's like, well, now I got to get to the part where I go get a provider because you're not really owning your greatness. So you're great professionally, you're doing your thing, but you're not owning your greatness on the inside. So there's where the mismatch happens. So hopefully this is helping folks. Lane, any thoughts on this or anything that resonates for you?
Yeah. Yeah, like I've had a lot of thoughts as you're talking. I think like something that has come to mind for me is just to touch on like another side of it too, that, you know, it's not always it's not always that you have to be you have to almost get to a point of you're healed before you find your partner,
Mm,
because I
mhm,
think like something that I have experienced with Colton is that we were not and in a lot of ways
mhm,
like we were not necessarily like either of us ready for like a serious relationship. And I
mhm,
speak personally. I mean, I was 23 when we met, and he
mhm,
was a little older, but like, and
mhm,
not that age is everything. It's not, but just to speak to the point that like I think I thought I was ready for something that I didn't even know what it was. And I
mhm,
think the point being that like it's not always about you have to do all this work and then you'll find your person. It's also about knowing when is it the right person, and that
mhm.
the work can also be done as a couple, and for you to be able to grow
Yeah.
together is like a piece of what real love is. And so I
Mhm,
think there is this myth that like you have to love yourself in order for it. Like there's this thing of like you have to love yourself if you want other people to love you. Like that's a very, very simplistic way to look at it. And I think that like there is, like
so
it.
can we agree we're not gonna call it a myth, we're gonna say it's to your point, it's simplistic, it's a bit black and white. There's levels, right? Because
Yes,
right?
yeah.
You
There's
at least
levels.
need to have some ability to view greatness in yourself, appreciate yourself to some level, right?
Yes,
Because yeah.
and chances
But
are
you
you're
don't
not
have to have arrived because we don't arrive, to your point.
we don't arrive. And I think
Mhm,
like there is like, yeah, there's some level of like, it's going to be very difficult for you to end up with the right person if you're like or for you to even find your picker might be broken if you're like very much like in a state of not loving yourself, low self-esteem, like very, not very, very much not even like aware of, like we said, like aware of what's even going on and what you're looking for and who you even are, like those, it's
That
gonna
the
be,
who you are part, the
yeah,
who you
that's going to
are
be
part.
hard for you to, it's going to be rare that you would actually find someone who's right for you if you're in that
Yeah,
place in
because you
life.
don't even know who you are, so how would you know what's right? I think
You
that was
wouldn't
when I
know.
think back to my youngest years, I look back, I just was like, "You like me, I like you." Okay, great.
Yeah, right. And so, but I also like to touch on the fact that like you, like, it's sometimes more than just, it's sometimes not like entirely logical, or can even be like like words can even describe, like there was a piece of me that just like knew that Colton was right. And like
Mhm,
I
mhm.
just, and I mean, not to go into like a lot of details, there were red flag, like there were plenty of things where I was like, this
Holy
might not
crap.
be, and like, yeah. And I think like I mean, we joke about it now, like yeah, like it's something that, you know, if it were someone else and I had seen some of the things I saw, or like knew some of the things I knew, like it's possible that I would have said this isn't right. But there was something more about and deeper that I can't even put words to, beyond just like who each of us are as people. It was right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it was worth like going through growth together,
yeah.
like hard and painful growth together. So I think like, I'm saying this just to say that like the picker broken thing is, the broken picker thing, like it is valid, and it is like a problem, and it is something that like people have as a pattern in their life. And but to that point, it isn't always the picker. It sometimes is like you not being in a place to see what, or to know what is important to you, and what and who you are to that point. Like you might be picking the right people, and like what does that even mean, like if you're not ready to even receive that, or to like devote the kind of time and energy to what real love really requires of you to like
Mhm,
cultivate over a period of time.
mhm. Which to me, all of that's under the same thing of just like,
Yeah.
how are you going about all this? And I appreciate that you brought the point up, Lane, because I think it's a good one. Just a reminder to everyone, I'm gonna restate what you said, Lane. You don't have to have figured out your whole everything before you meet your right person. So I
It's
appreciate you
impossible
saying that,
to.
Lane,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
and that's for everything. Like people like literally want to get right before they go to church. They want to know get all the skills before you get the job. Like just remember, guys, you don't arrive to anything. Like life is a endless journey of learning and growing. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I think it does highlight the point of this is not a black, white, all or nothing kind of a thing. But I will say, I think I will say, one of the big differentiators here is the ability to be honest with yourself all along the way, because you it's not like for sure right away. You can think like you did,
Mhm.
but then you also have the flags, but you've got to be willing to see the flag and keep seeing the flag, and then address the flag, and then be able to accurately assess whether the
Yeah.
flag got addressed, right? Because to your point, and I really appreciate it, because even Dwayne and I, honey, people
Yeah.
like, you guys are so great. Let me tell you how we got here.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
I don't know any strong relationships that didn't start on some rocky roads. So it's not about that. It is a much deeper thing that we can
Yeah.
never get into on any episode, right? Of saying like there is a journey of learning, but when you get all the way to the freaking altar and you've been knowing, and then you keep going, like
Yeah.
where's the part
Yeah.
where you start to acknowledge it's been a long time
Yeah.
that you've known and you haven't even spoken on it, or you have spoken on it? And we've talked about this for 30 million times that this is problematic, and we're still talking about it, right? Or whatever your patterns are, or their patterns are, that you haven't been willing to acknowledge. And so that's where, to me this all ties in, is that when people get in euphoric, he's the one, she's the one, I'm falling up, then you like, then you feel like you got to stay there. And so, like with everything else I would ever teach about, you've got to just be willing to reassess your truth to know, is that true today? Like yesterday you were
Mhm.
like, he's the one, and for the last 3 years you said it, but are you willing to be honest with what you're seeing and feeling on a regular basis? And that's really the skill set, is learning how to be honest with yourself about everything, not just dating.
Mhm.
Like to your point of like, oh, you don't have to have your whole self together. No, you don't, but you do have to know that you don't have your whole self together. You have
Yeah.
to have a sense of it, how, in what way, right? And at least be aware and
And
have the
willing
ability
to
to accurately assess what's going on, right?
right.
And if two people come together and they're able to, help each other grow, as you described, and Dwayne and I have that same story, then yeah, that's workable. So I appreciate you bringing that up,
Yeah.
because again, this is so nuanced. There's no way to cover it all, but without adding that piece, Lane, I think we would have missed something big. So, ultimately, I think in conclusion, love is not like rain that just showers down on you and you're like in the movies running
Yeah.
running in the grass, you know what I mean? And then a rainbow pops up, and then like that's the whole scene. Like there might be a scene followed by you're sitting in a car by yourself crying, followed by you guys had fun, you know what I mean? Like it's like a
Yeah.
whole thing. And so there's a journey there, and I think the biggest suggestion I would have is take it one day at a time, as we should do with life, period, right? If you're talking to someone, you're feeling the vibe, cool, we'll stay the course, and just, instead of assuming and hoping, I hope this never ends. I don't even put that on my relationship. I don't hope it never ends, even though I hope it never ends, if that makes sense. Like I show up to every day appreciative that once again today I'm looking across the way at someone who I am just really enjoying being in life with. And
Yeah.
that way I'm not like putting blinders on that would prevent me from acknowledging if I'm seeing that we have started to stray from what used to be,
Mhm.
this really good thing, to something else. So just allowing yourself to take it one day at a time. Be honest. Is today really great? Or are you still saying that because you have told everyone how freaking euphorically awesome this is? And now you don't want to go back and say, it's starting to feel a little questionable. So then you just keep telling the story because now you're embarrassed. And I think that was one of the things that came up, Lane. So any final
Yeah.
thoughts, Lane, for you as we wrap up on this very juicy
Yeah.
conversation?
It's hard. Like it's just a hard thing. I mean, dating is very hard. It's very exhausting. It can be, and it can be very discouraging. It can make you feel really bad about yourself.
Mhm.
And so putting yourself out there, if that's where you're at right now and you're just, you want to find the right person and you haven't been able to yet, like just, I feel for you. Like I feel like that is it's a hard thing, and it's hard to keep putting yourself out there and to be vulnerable in that way, and to stay, like fresh, because I feel like people can get so jaded from dating, and
Mhm.
like you were talking about some of that, like, oh, all
Mhm.
these men are horrible, or like, dating apps are just
Mhm.
stuck, and like it's so, it's exhausting. So I feel
Mhm.
like, yeah, to obviously take this all, just whatever feels right from this conversation, to take it, but like to know, it it is a hard thing, and the work that you have to do yourself, again, to like be in a place where you are, able to recognize that you have the right person, or to find that right person, like it's it's sometimes challenging, and can be a difficult road, but it is worth it. I mean, I will say, from like my perspective, and what, like, the journey that I have had with my current relationship, like it is so worth it. And the hard parts of that, and like the like bad relationships I had before, like the times I thought I was falling in love, like, and wasn't, and all of that, like it was it was worth it for where I am now and where we are now. And just um yeah, I think it's just a journey, but I think that from this conversation, I do feel like there are some things, if that's where you're at, like there are some things that you can try that maybe you haven't tried before. So it's like, if this is a pattern and you just keep ending up saying the same things, seeing the same people, meeting the same kinds of people, and it's just not working, like maybe it's time to try something new, like reframe and focus on a different thing, like and I mean, it's so cliche, like focus on yourself, like, but I mean, there is some reality to it, like, and I think by focusing on yourself, that doesn't mean you have to stop focusing on dating, but it can be a both and focusing on yourself while you are focusing on dating, and that can be a good place to start. But that's about it. That's about it for me.
Well, and I will end with saying this. While yes, I would confirm that dating is hard. I will absolutely unapologetically say this. It is much easier the more time you spent to learn yourself, heal yourself, and know yourself. Because when
Mhm.
you know who you are, it makes it really easy to see when you're showing up across from someone who is aligned, right? Because how can I know if you're aligned if I don't really know where I'm at? Right?
Mhm.
Right. So I will just say you don't need to have your all of your answers because it's not even a thing. But I will say the more of those you have, the more your feet are on the ground with who you are and how you feel about yourself, the much easier that dating is. So we'll leave you with that until the next juicy cup of joy. Take care, y'all. Be safe.
All right, we'll see you soon.